the energy poverty. I'm very happy to speak about this topic because it's very up-to-date thing in the current situation in the EU and regarding all the challenges that we face when it comes to very high energy prices. And over the past couple of years, quite a significant number of the countries has introduced some measures to actually freeze the prices of the energy, so that will mitigate the negative consequences for the people regarding the bills they have to pay for the energy. But that kind of the solutions, they cannot last forever. And for example, in Poland right now, since the 1st of July, the energy prices are not fully the market prices, but at least they're closer to the ones they should be in reality. And these kinds of the factors, they really have a huge impact on how we actually assess the energy poverty. And since the problem is not new, it already exists since quite some time. At the EU level, we do have quite a lot of the different policies and measures that were introduced to alleviate energy poverty. So that's the topic I would like to present today. So firstly, just to put the things in order, we need to highlight what is the energy poverty. One of the problems that you might already be familiar with is that there is no one common definition on what is energy poverty. However, I think that if you ask a person who is working in the energy sector how that person would define what the energy poverty is, definitely he or she will be capable of doing so. However, if we really look into the different aspects and details of what the energy poverty might be, then the situation is getting a little bit more complicated. But there is one common thing that the energy poverty is related with some insufficient energy consumption to meet the basic needs. Whatever you call it, the basic needs, because for each of the person that could be a slightly different thing. So that's why it's a little bit subjective. Plus, we also have to consider the differences between EU countries that for example, in countries like Portugal or Spain, where the winter time is not so severe, then the energy poverty will be understood a little bit differently than in the countries like Poland, where we used to have quite low temperatures during the winter time, which is a totally different approach. So if we look in the literature, there is a lot of talk on the energy poverty. Here I have shown some definition I found in one of the scientific articles, which was going through the energy poverty as an overview. So González Higuino defined that basically energy poverty would be the absence of sufficient choice in accessing adequate, affordable, reliable, high quality, safe, and environmentally being energy services to support economic and human development. So as you might notice, there are not only the aspects of the energy consumptions related to the people, but we also consider the safety factor as well as the environmental factor, which is also a very important thing, especially since we are right now in the era of the energy transition. We try to switch towards different energy resources, and definitely energy poverty is related with these kinds of the thing. This ongoing problem with the definition makes it quite tough to make the energy poverty comparable between the countries. If we just look at this table, I have adapted it from one of the publications from 2020. And at this point, I would like to emphasize that this table could have changed a little bit with the upcoming updates of the national energy and climate plans that the member state countries shall submit to the European Commission, and quite likely this this table will be readapted a bit. But nevertheless, even if we don't take that into the consideration for the moment, what we can notice is that just a few years ago, there was a very tricky situation, since we did have some definitions in not a majority of the countries, because most of them didn't have the formal definition, or had some partial definitions, but that was just the case of two countries. However, if not definition, then the other solution is to use some quantified measures on how we can actually measure exactly what is energy poverty. So we take some strict measure, some values, and then that's it. By that we can judge whether we do encounter the energy poverty problems or not. So that's how the situation is looking like within the EU member state countries. And since we don't have this one common definition, then the challenge is, how can we compare this phenomenon between the different countries? And secondly, later on, when we will have to look at the MURE database, then if a certain country is about to identify the policies and measures that aim to mitigate, to alleviate the energy poverty, if they do it by the different definitions they have adopted, then the selection of these policies might be a bit different, which makes it quite hard to compare. And later on, when we have a look at the MURE database, then it's one of the first things that you might notice, that I wouldn't say it's a mess, because it's too much, because all these policies and measures that are inserted into the MURE database, they undergo quality control by skilled people who actually know how to reassure whether the measures have been assigned properly or not. So it's a huge work which is done by the people who are managing this database in order to provide the high quality data. And what you will see later on will be the data after the quality control. So we are pretty much sure that they represent realistic measures and policies that were included in the database. Here I'm presenting a graphic which I have readopted a bit, because in the some of the past resources I found some statistics from 2021 that 6.9% of the Europeans were unable to keep their homes adequately warm, and that was pretty much it. And then I went to the years of 2022 and 2023. I went for the website worldometer.info. You might know this website because it was quite popular during the COVID times, because on this website you could follow quite a lot of the different statistics regarding COVID, but not only. It's one of the best data sources for that kind of statistics. So basically, if we just look at the percentage scale regarding the Europeans that don't meet this capacity to keep their homes adequately warm, we see a trend which is going up. So it's a rising trend from 6.9 until a little bit over 10%. But percent scale is okay, but how does it look like in reality if we just judge this by the number of the people? So 6.9% of the people in 2021, that was 51.4 million, but 10.6 in 2023, it's 78.6 million people. So it's over 27 million people more just over the past 2 years, which is an enormous number. Nothing to add that it's an increase of over 50%, but if you try to visualize yourself how much is 27 million people, then you can look at the population of countries like the Netherlands or Belgium, and it's much more than that. So it's really a huge problem. However, the energy poverty is not uniformly distributed. It's not a phenomenon which is a just phenomenon. So on this slide, you can see some statistics regarding the energy poverty according to the data that can be publicly found in Statista. Statista is making lots of different graphics, quite frequently based on the Eurostat data, which is once again high quality data of which we can be quite sure that it's a reliable data source to refer. And to the left, you can see the graphic which represents how the energy poverty looked like in Europe back in 2021. So what we can see is that just from the geographical perspective, if we move towards the south, most of the time this is where the problem starts to arise. However, quite a few countries have much more, well, maybe not much more, but just over 20% of the people who are touched by the energy poverty. And so this is kind of the tough problem. So there we are. So here we have 22.5. Then if we move south, we have Turkey, we have Bulgaria. So these are the countries which really have a huge problem with energy poverty. And there are also some islands like here, we have 35.8. So that's really, really a lot. But then if we move towards west, Portugal or Spain, these are also quite high numbers. And it might be a bit surprising if you compare these values with what is happening here, because you might say that probably the energy poverty problem will be more related to the poorer countries in the EU, but that's not always the case. So energy poverty don't have any borders in terms of that. So this phenomenon, probably apart from Scandinavia, where it barely does not exist, or some countries like Switzerland or Austria. Other than that, all the countries are facing it to some extent. And then if we look at the graphic to the right, then it represents the data from 2022. And if we compare it, because both of them are based on the Eurostat data, well, what we can see is that even if we just compare, we might observe some decreases between some of the countries, like, for example, in Bulgaria, we have this tiny reduction of the energy poverty. However, we have to look at it in the bigger scale, because these countries, which are mostly touched by the energy poverty, they have, well, they should have more measures to tackle the phenomenon. So over there, we would expect some kind of the decrease. However, for example, if we look at France, So back in 2021, it was just 6%. Right now, well, back in 2022, nearly 11%. So almost a 100% increase over 1 year. So it's really, really a lot. So that's how we have to understood this kind of the statistics in comparison with the previous table where we observe this increasing number of the people who are touched by energy poverty. So since the problem of the energy poverty is not new, I would just like to briefly go over some initiatives that were found at the EU level that aimed to tackle, that aim to discuss, to find some means in order to mitigate and alleviate the negative consequences of the energy poverty. So the first rules, the first concepts, they were found in the Directive 2009/72 EC. So that was back in 2009. And then if you just make a bit more the switch, I don't want to go through all of these documents, but just focus on the most important milestones, because probably quite many of you were already involved in the preparation of these documents and were dealing with this over the past couple of years. So years of 2018, 2019, we did have adoption of the Clean Energy for All Europeans packages, which was followed in 2019 by the draft NSPs, where the EU countries were obliged to include in their policies and measures some addresses regarding the energy poverty. And later on, we did have quite an important documents which were prepared for different countries, renovation wave. So it was introduced in many EU countries. And in 2021, we had the initiatives of Fit for 55 package, which was, we might say that quite firmly, kind of the game changer, because it really introduced a lot of the different approaches, a lot of the different concepts that should be introduced in order to perform the just energy transition, and introduce new measures that can also help to tackle energy poverty. And later on, since 2022, where we do have the Russian invasion in Ukraine, of which we spoke a lot over the years in terms of the energy sector, this also had a huge impact on the entire concept and approach of the EU policies, because it was a switch of our thinking in a very short period of time. So just to give you an example, if we compare the situation in the EU, for example, 10 years ago, where we really count on the natural gas as a mean of the energy that will help in the transition period in the energy transformation. So after 2022, we had this switch that we would like to skip this stage. And from the political perspective, of course, you can do it, but then there is some price of it. And one of the consequences might be high energy prices when you have to do this switch in a very short period of time and you didn't have the backup plan. And of course, since the energy sector is so huge, you cannot always have the backup plan because you need to have the strategy. But as the geopolitical life is changing quite dynamically, then we need to adapt. So the last 2 years, there was a lot of effort to readapt the policies to new reality. We have some revisions of the directives like energy efficiency one, and very recently the revision of energy performance of building directive, which was also a very important document, which gives us the perspective of what is going on to happen in the upcoming couple of years. So taking all that into account, we can state that EU is really putting lots of the effort to tackle the energy poverty, even though still we don't have this common definition. But at least we are dealing with the common topic, and probably at some point there might be some efforts to make it more coins, to have more universal approach, which will be then easier to compare between the countries. So right now, let's have a look at the MURE database. I think that some of you might be already familiar with this database. So basically, it's a part of the Odyssey MURE project, and they are both freely available on the website. So if you just Google Odyssey or MURE database, then you have an open access to all this data. And in the MURE database, of which I'm going to speak about, you can find different measures and policies that aim to tackle with the energy efficiency. And what you can see here on the slide, that's the print screen from the website. And in the bottom left corner, you have some options how you can filter the data. And in the black box, I have highlighted a dedicated panel which helps us to filter the measures in the database regarding energy poverty and energy sufficiency. And regarding the first one, energy poverty, we have two options. Either we just do it entirely by energy poverty, or we do split it into two categories. The first one is aiming mainly or exclusively at energy poverty. And the second one is including an important component addressing energy poverty. So let's have a look right now on how the energy poverty looks like when we filter by these buttons. So the first graphic I would like to show is the state from 3 years ago, July 2021. When in total we had only 19 measures in all the member state countries. There were just three measures that were mainly or exclusively aimed at energy poverty. So only Greece, Portugal, and Romania, they did have one measure that could be classified directly in this category. And secondly, 16 measures were the ones that included some kind of the components which were addressing energy poverty, because that's some other story, since energy poverty is a very broad topic. Sometimes we will have some policies and measures that will face the challenges related to the different aspects, not only the one related to the energy poverty. So therefore, they will be not entirely dedicated to the topic, but partially. So that's why they will be classified in this third column that you can see over here. And the leading countries back in July 2021, these were Bulgaria and Spain. You might remember from the previous slides that these countries were quite significantly touched by the energy poverty. So that's quite logical that they were already introducing some policies and measures to mitigate the problem. So right now, let's have a look at July 2024. So we have a significant increase of the measures which are in the database. And by the words "they are in the database," I mean that these are the measures that are introduced at the national level between different member state countries. So it's not a theoretical approach, but it's the real implementation that is ongoing. So still we have this disequilibrium between these two categories. Their name in the database has changed slightly, but basically that corresponds to the same thing. We still have much more measures that address some important components to the energy poverty, and much less that aim mainly or exclusively at the energy poverty. So in total, that represents an increase of nearly 400% in comparison to July 2021, because now we have 75 measures and we did have 19 measures 3 years ago. So let's have a look at these 19 measures aiming mainly or exclusively at energy poverty. So these are the countries that have introduced these measures, and the leading ones are Greece and United Kingdom. United Kingdom might be quite well surprising here on the list, since if we go back to one of the previous slides, there were no data here on the United Kingdom, but of course they are not the members of the EU, but they are part of the database here, and they've decided to introduce some of the measures because they were also touched by this severe problem of the energy poverty. And the second leading country is Greece with 4 measures. So that's really a lot, because these two countries, Greece and United Kingdom, they constitute nearly a half of all the measures that are here in the table. And then if we look at these 19 measures on how they are divided between different sectors, then 16 out of the 19 measures, they are focused on the household sector. 2 are classified as general cross cutting, so they are more general programs, and just 1 is allocated to the transport sector. Once again, it wouldn't be a surprise that most of them is allocated to the household, since this is the most vulnerable sector for the energy poverty. One of the examples of the of the measures that was introduced as aiming mainly or exclusively at the energy poverty, I have chosen as an example Greece. So the measure is the National Energy Poverty Action Plan. It is classified as general cross-cutting, and back in September 21, Greece released an action plan to combat energy poverty that gave a quantitative definition of energy poverty, and also defined a broader strategy which was backed by more specific measures that aim to reduce the energy poverty. And in the plan, the aim is to upgrade 10,000 vulnerable households with energy saving technologies, renewable energy sources systems, with some help of the subsidies up to 90% in those regions of the Greece which were affected by the delignification regarding the power sector within the undergoing just transition. Next one is the second part of the MURE database, filtered right now by the measures that include an important component addressing energy poverty. As of July 2024, we do have 56 measures, and we have, without any doubt, 3 leading countries in terms of them. The first one is Spain, then we have Cyprus and Latvia. But within other countries, in some of them, we also have quite a lot of measures, for example, Bulgaria or Ireland. So definitely, all the countries make some effort to introduce these measures that can tackle the energy poverty. And then, if we look at the distribution by the sectors, so here it's a little bit different, but still household is leading with 30 measures. The second one is general cross-cutting, but in comparison with the previous pie chart that we saw, here the proportion is a little bit more for the general cross-cutting measures which are included in the MURE database. And just 4 measures, they are dedicated to the services sector. So that's how these measures were classified regarding the important component that addresses energy poverty. An example of the measure for the country, I have picked up Spain, and the sector is services. The measure is entitled Aid Program for Energy Rehabilitation in Existing Buildings in Municipalities with Demographic Challenges. And the program aimed for some actions regarding energy retrofits for the existing buildings, taking into account the demographic challenges in municipalities, and it aimed to boost the sustainability of the existing building through reactions on the thermal envelope of the buildings, as well as some installations, both thermal and lighting. And it was quite specific for pretty much municipalities with under 5,000 inhabitants, so relatively small one. So dedicated program measure to smaller accumulations of the people, not big cities agglomerations, because they have to be tackled differently when it comes for the energy poverty. So that's pretty much it regarding my presentation. Thanks a lot, and right now we move to the second part.